Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we are joined by Dan Goldsmith, who is the CEO of Tendo Systems, and Jen Goldsmith, who is the president of Tendo Systems. How are y'all?
Doing great, thank you.
Happy to have you. And this question is on my list of questions, but let's make it the first one. You guys are brother and sister, correct?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, so and you guys have worked in a lot of the same places and worked together on a lot of things over the years. It's kind of unique and rare. How does that dynamic work, and ultimately, who's the actual boss? Like
well, then Jen should obviously answer that one.
I think it works very well. It's interesting. I think when you work with a sibling, you know each other almost better than everyone else. And so it's a really interesting working relationship that can be super impactful and super positive. And I think we emphasize each other's strengths and support each other's weaknesses.
Yeah. So when you guys are at like family Christmas, do the other siblings, aunts, uncles, parents say, all right, you two can't talk about work here, or do they like hearing your stories?
They definitely do not like hearing about work at family events, and sometimes a little hard to resist, but we try to be good. Usually in the Goldsmith household, holidays are filled with interesting social or political debates, which are typically sort of very dynamic and heated, but always end with a lot of love.
Perfect. Well, that sounds fun. All right. So what is Tendo Systems, and where did the idea come from?
Yep. So Tendo Systems is a software company, and we're focused on building solutions that can create better and exceptional experiences, greater clinical outcomes, and greater efficiency for patients, clinicians, and caregivers. They all start in a little bit of the origin story here, but as Jen and I were thinking about what we wanted to do at the beginning of last year, we wanted to focus on building another company. And we spent our entire careers focused on industries like education and life sciences. These are industries that have the potential of doing so much good in the world, impacting people's lives. And we started looking at healthcare, especially with the onset of the pandemic. It left us with an opportunity to really sort of think differently about an industry that touches so many people's lives, not only here in the US, but also across the globe. So there's first and foremost a deep mission orientation of what we want to do here at Tendo. And so healthcare seemed like the perfect opportunity to take the experience that we've gained over the last 25 years and apply it to a significant need for change in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. All right. So there's certain markets and business plans that are a little bit easier, right? And then there's certain markets and industries that are a little bit harder. I'd say healthcare and what you guys are trying to do is on the harder end of the spectrum. So, Dan, you were CEO of Instructure, and, you've got experience in life science and consulting and those types of things. What motivated you enough to jump into a fairly difficult industry versus possibly something that might come a little easier?
But I think there's a couple things there. First of all, there's a lot of similarities between healthcare, education, and life sciences, actually. All three industries are regulated industries. All three industries are very global industries that, again, touch people's own lives. And actually, if you look at it deeply, all three industries have a very distributed stakeholder element to them. Life sciences deals with many of the similar stakeholders as healthcare. You're dealing with pharmaceutical companies, with physicians, and with patients. Education has a lot to do with the educational institution, teachers and students. And then, of course, healthcare is really around the healthcare organization, providers, along with clinicians and patients and caregivers that are an important part of that equation. But Jen and I really kicked off things together and sort of had the idea to focus on this industry. But I don't think if we had the experience and both had the experience in education and life sciences, I don't think we would have been as inclined or excited about sort of jumping into the problem with healthcare. And then one last comment, because Jen should jump in here, is I don't think I would have done this without Jen either. We've had an incredible 25 years of working together and finding success, and just a lot of trust and respect. And we can talk a little bit about what we call the founding team as well. Jen, do you want to add a little bit?
Yeah, the one thing I would add is, we often run towards complexity because sometimes those are the problems that are really worth solving. And so while it's hard and difficult and complex over time, we can really make an impact, I think, in healthcare and the way people experience healthcare overall. And so those types of problems are really the ones we get excited about because we feel it can really make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anyone that's ever gone to the doctor or the hospital or anything would be rooting for you guys and your team, because it's doesn't work, and it shouldn't be that complex, and it's just a massive hassle. Like whether you have stage 4 cancer or you're just going in for a physical, like it never works, and it's always a pain. So I'd assume there's a lot of people rooting for you.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things there, Garrett, is when you look at the experience in healthcare, it's very different than the experiences we have every day in our consumer lives. So I can order a pizza and have it delivered, and I can track its delivery through an application. I can go into Open Table and I can make a reservation for Greek food for 5 people for tomorrow at 7 p.m. within a 5-mile radius. And it's super simple and super straightforward. I press a couple of buttons and I'm done in a matter of seconds. The healthcare experience is very, very different. And I've talked to a lot of people about just simple things like creating an appointment. And oftentimes the appointment goes something like this. You call into a number, you get transferred 3 or 4 times, you repeat the same healthcare information also 3 or 4 times. And 20 minutes later, if you haven't given up already, you may have an appointment in hand. But there's a level of frustration, I think, that those experiences in healthcare don't really mirror our experiences in the consumer realm.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned regulations, and you guys have worked in other regulated markets. How did you two in particular, and then I guess the founding team, kind of decide who's going to draw that short straw and jump in on the regulation side and make sure everything is good with compliance and stuff?
All right, great question. So, we have an incredible team that's actually a mixture of technology DNA and healthcare expertise. And so that was actually quite easy. Again, our backgrounds in life sciences and education lend well to focusing on the healthcare industry. In life sciences, you're dealing with regulations from the FDA or EMA. In education, you're having to comply with FERPA and making sure you're managing data and information and engaging with your stakeholders in the right way. And obviously, in healthcare, you want to make sure you're complying with similar standards around HIPAA and looking at personal health information or personal information in a very specific way. So we're very fortunate to have veterans not only from amazing technology companies, but we have some incredible veterans from the healthcare industry that have sat on both sides of the table, the vendor side as well as the healthcare side, understanding deeply these regulations and what needs to be put in place by a software company to ensure that we meet all the needs of the industry.
So you've got that those things change, right? Whether it's ACA, Obamacare, or some politician gets a new idea and thinks that the laws or regulations should change. You've got to keep that monitored and tracked, at the same time building an actual company that needs to be monetized, and the applications need to be built, the platform needs to be built. So kind of same type of question. In the early phases of the foundation of the company, how did you guys divide up roles, and who is going to cover investor relations and be the spokesperson? How did you guys ultimately end up on that decision?
Yeah, there's something with Jen and I, but really for the broader team, having worked together a lot before, you have a natural rhythm in terms of how we work together. We understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. We understand where there are opportunities to collaborate and opportunities to divide and conquer. Jen has done a phenomenal job through her career building some of the most leading platforms and applications, out in these spaces. And so Jen and the team are really focused a lot on the innovation and how we build those solutions. I've been focusing a lot on the structuring of the company, the general and administrative capabilities, really connecting with the industry in the broad sense. So Jen and I both spend a good amount of our time sort of collaborating on things, but Jen is driving a lot of the product innovation and building the team. I'm connecting with a lot of leaders in healthcare and partners in healthcare as well.
Got it. And how do these partnerships work? Because this is a tall order, and obviously you'd either need a lot of money and a huge team, or you'd kind of have to have strategic partnerships and be friendly with others in the industry. How do those conversations go? And I guess ultimately, how do the deals end up working?
Yeah, so it's interesting in terms of the approach, and we've been through this several times as we've brought new capabilities and applications to market. One model that we found that is super effective is a foundational customer model, and that allows us to partner very deeply with the industry. And so what I mean by that is instead of going out and trying to grab every customer we possibly can and starting to get them in and on the platform, we actually focus really, really deeply with 3 to 5 foundational customers that we kind of carefully select to the alignment of the vision that we have for the industry as a whole. And so you may have seen the announcement recently. We're deeply partnered with Jefferson Health here in Philadelphia to allow us to build these capabilities in a way that will meet healthcare's needs. We're also very deeply partnered with General Catalyst, a venture capital organization that we work with, who's helping us to build that company overall and sharing in that journey. And they have a deep focus on healthcare and the healthcare industry. In fact, over time, they've committed to investing over $1 billion into healthcare technology. And so those deep visions were shared by all of these organizations. We'll be very careful in how we go to market and building things in the right way.
Got it. So in 2020, there was a bit of a pandemic, which is an interesting time for you guys to be building a healthcare company. Give us a couple of high points and low points of 2020 from your guys' perspective.
Yeah, high points. First of all, we're just elated in starting this company and gaining a tremendous amount of momentum during this time. I think secondly, during this time, it's even more meaningful to be focusing on this type of issue, this type of opportunity to help create these much more frictionless experiences for patients and providers, because we see some of the challenges, the cracks in the foundation that healthcare has struggled with over the past year to make this change. It's been interesting starting a company and growing a team during the pandemic. We haven't really been face to face as a team, so that's been a little bit difficult. But to be honest with you, I think it's allowed us to put in this extra effort and put the work into making those connections in a much more meaningful way. It also gives us an interesting opportunity to redefine the office experience. So, we will have offices. We have anchors for the company right now in Philadelphia and Silicon Slopes and Silicon Valley. And so we'll continue to build out teams. But we also love bringing in talent from across the country and across the globe over time. So we will continue to be sort of a hybrid and virtual culture. We will have physical offices in all those locations. But I think moving forward, offices will really be about culture, connection, and collaboration. And so we're actually pretty excited to be able to sort of carry those themes into the physical space as the world starts opening up. The biggest downside is we'll no longer be able to work in our pajama pants as often.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of sweatpants around. Even in our office, there's a lot of sweatpants, and those are slowly being phased out.
That's right.
Yeah, so you guys had a kind of a perfect storm of remote and Zoom calls and all of that, and it probably was a little bit of a layer of complexity, because there is something to be said of all hands meetings and let's whiteboard this out, and you're on mute and your screen is black and your kids are yelling, and I assume you guys will apply a lot of what you've learned into the future, even though you might have these offices. So the question here is, so Philadelphia, Silicon Valley, and then here in Utah, Silicon Slopes, what's the strategic position in like hiring folks? Is it going to be engineers here, engineers everywhere, sales here? How are you guys thinking through that?
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of everything everywhere. And so I think one of the things that COVID has taught us and this experience has taught us is that talent exists in many different places, and accessing that talent is super important. So, we'll have centers for certain things in certain areas. For example, we have deep expertise and experience in UI UX sitting in Silicon Slopes right now, as well as in our marketing team. We have some deep engineering experience both in Philadelphia and also in Silicon Valley. we'll see those teams build out in all of those locations. And going back to the question of culture, I think something that's really important in this kind of virtual world now is how deliberately you build that culture. And there's an opportunity with that to extend the culture across the country, and also to allow for really talented folks to come into the team. Dan and I have both spent a lot of time in Utah. We've been so incredibly impressed with the level of talent on the Silicon Slopes, both from an engineering perspective, a product management perspective, and in many other areas. And so we're excited to really build out the team here in Utah as well.
Garrett, by the way, one of my favorite games with Jen is she can pick out pretty much, if you show her a UI in software, she can pretty much pick out what geography it comes from. So on our next podcast visit, we can just flash a bunch of different software user interfaces and put her to test. What do you think?
Oh, that'd be fun. We could gamify and maybe even take bets on it. Make it.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we just launched kind of a new website and a new product called Founders Hub, and so we had designers and engineers and everything, and they'd show it to me, and I'm like, oh, looks great, looks great. So after a while, they're like, you say everything looks great. And I say, I have low standards. I don't really care if it's a bright pink or some weird pink that I've never heard of. I just like it when I click on something, it works. So eventually I kind of stopped getting it looped in on anything design. So, okay. So for you, Dan, and I believe you, Jen, as well, you do angel investments as well. And it's kind of a unique position to be in a startup yourself, although you guys, are a little bit more experienced and capitalized, and you have a little bit more of a robust team, but you get to live in both worlds of earning your keep and singing for your supper, and then also helping younger entrepreneurs or first timers. What do you learn from both of those processes, and how often do they kind of weld together?
So Garrett, one of the things I really liked is that you called us experienced and not old. You can see our gray hair here on the Zoom, but no, I'll let Dan talk a little bit about the experiences that we've had with investing, et cetera.
And so Garrett, so first of all, thank you. That's an awesome question. I think the angel investing and the advising that Jen and I have done throughout the years is actually first born out of the concept of mentoring and helping others. And I think that falls in very well with the theme of the industries that we focused on and the way that we think about culture of company. So I want to touch on a couple of things here real quick. One is that's really where it starts. I think what Jen and I get very excited about when we invest in companies or decide to spend time as advisors or board members is we look at the entrepreneurs, we look at the founders, we look at the teams. And if we could have one iota of influence on helping them learn something, helping them grow, helping those teams achieve something that they never thought was possible, or at least learn from the scar tissue that we've developed over the years, we feel that we're giving back in a meaningful way. We've been fortunate to have tremendous opportunities and mentors throughout our careers. And so it feels really good to be able to give back in that way and in that context. The other thing is we've brought that into Tendo as a company as well. So we think deeply about culture. We think deeply about the progression and the growth of employees. It's a fact that most people moving forward will stay in any one particular job no more than 4 or 5 years. And that number continues to go down and will probably be at 4 or 5 different companies throughout their career. And so one of the philosophies that we've actually adopted in Tendo already as an early company is to provide mentoring, provide insights, even beyond just sort of the focused work we're doing is how do startups operate? How do entrepreneurs grow? We are not arrogant to think that we're the best company for everybody throughout their career. So we embed that mentoring in. And in fact, we know people will move on from Tendo. We actually celebrate that idea almost like alumni. And I think if we can play a fundamental role in helping to mentor and grow other people who go out into the world and create other awesome companies, that'll be a significant contribution beyond just what we can do at any one company. Jen lost her power here, so she'll be back in a second, but you can keep firing questions at me.
The whole power's gone. That's kind of a new one. Okay, so the meat and potatoes part of this podcast is I kind of ask every guest, and it's how you kind of structure your days and how you get through a very arduous day and a very arduous week and a very arduous month. It could be the exercise, the yoga, and it could also be a notepad. It could be Slack. How do you kind of manage your day and interact with your team and try to keep everyone rowing in the same direction?
So great question. So first off, let me talk about my personal sort of day and experience. I'm an early riser. I've done a lot of work internationally every year. So my days frequently start about 2 or 3 a.m. That period between about 2 or 3 a.m. and 8 a.m. is some of my favorite time where I can get organized and sort of mentally clicked in for the day. I generate a lot of excitement. And also I get a window of time in there where I can, help my 3 teenage girls get ready for their school day as well and be part of making breakfast or sending them off. Which is really enjoyable. And that's the place I go to personally, by the way. And, outside of work, I recharge a lot with my family, who spend a lot of time, skiing and biking, being outdoors, playing games, etc. In terms of the cohesiveness of the team, especially in a time when we're very virtual, is just keeping up those conversations. We're active on instant messaging platforms. We've created forums within the company already. We have a culture club and a DEI club and organization as well that's focused on culture. Kelly McCuskey is our VP of business operations. She does a phenomenal job of sort of building in time for the company to connect. We have a water cooler time, virtual water cooler time, if you will. We have virtual socials where we come in and have different games and gameplay on Zoom. And then we talk a lot as a leadership team of just making sure we carve out the time to connect with people one-on-one, just to have a conversation, to check in, to make sure that we can, understand where people are, how they're progressing, and just what's top of mind. What's unique about that too is we see so many incredible ideas. The last thing I'd like to mention is we did implement a program called Tendo Breathe at the beginning of the company. A lot of companies sort of struggle with professional development or reimbursement of education or whatever. I think especially as a startup and as a technology company, a lot of times people are deprioritizing their own health, and they're sacrificing that for their company, for their family, et cetera. So we actually set aside funds every single year for every single employee where they can basically use those funds to invest in themselves. So the only requirement is that they spend it on themselves. It could be a new mountain bike. It could be an adventure to Disney World. It could be something more mundane like an office chair or a very comfortable office chair. But it's something they spend on themselves. And then they share it with the company. So we have a lot of cool photos and a lot of cool stories of employees at Tendo already utilizing their Breathe funds to invest in themselves, learn some new things, and grow.
That's awesome. That's a great perk, to say the least. Well, if you can get 3 teenage daughters ready and out the door, I guess the rest of your day is easy, even being a CEO of a tech company.
I run the gauntlet in the morning, but yeah, it can be challenging sometimes.
Absolutely. All right. Well, cool. Kind of last question. I'm sure you guys have roadmaps, and everybody does it differently. Google does the OKRs, and others have long-term, others have short-term. But what are you guys most excited about over the next 12 months as you build out the company?
I'll start and maybe Dan can add in. I'm really excited about the team that we're building and the mission that we're going after. So this concept of being able to really make a significant difference in the everyday lives of all the people around us and the clinicians who work so hard in healthcare is just really invigorating. And so, we're watching the team grow and expand in really interesting and new ways and come together as a culture in very significant ways as well. And so seeing that happen is a really fulfilling thing. I think the other thing that we're really, really excited about is to work and get some product out there and into the market and really see how people use it and how we can improve things over time. And then lastly, these partnerships that we're building with the healthcare industry, I think are just absolutely phenomenal. The openness with which these partners have embraced the partnership has been wonderful. The partnership that we've exhibited with them throughout many different activities has been just phenomenal, and we couldn't be more grateful for their support and help.
The other thing that I'll add on to that is just the team. I'll go back to the team we're building. I'm literally humbled every day at how amazing the team is, how dynamic, the ingenuity, the invention of what they're doing across the company. We're close to 40 people right now. We'll grow to 100 people this calendar year, close to 100 people. So, we're continuing to evolve very quickly, but it's exciting to see sort of the Tendo family grow. I think Salt Lake City is actually our fastest growing group at this point in time. And a lot of the work we're doing is product and engineering work. I think there's also some really special cultures that develop deeply in engineering and product teams, because the work that engineering and product teams do are so connected to the mission at Tendo as well. And when you can start to see that thread start to bear results and connect, and you see that first patient, that first user start to use your technology, there's just a tremendous amount of excitement and a large, rewarding feel around that as well. So I couldn't be more excited about the team and the team's growth moving forward.
Yeah, it sounds exciting, and it's definitely a difference, with you two having experience, versus kind of a younger first-time entrepreneur. You guys are very buttoned down and squared away, and seems like you've thought through a lot of the things that you've experienced in past careers. And we're excited to watch this journey, and are glad that Silicon Slopes is a part of it, and look forward to your guys' continued success. So thank you so much, Dan and Jen. It's been great having you on, and appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Garrett.
Garrett, thank you. And just a big shout out to Silicon Slopes as well. I love the work the organization does and continues to do, growing a community that is truly unique amongst sort of, tech hubs and tech communities. I love the mission of the organization, the people I've met along the way, yourself included. So thanks for giving us this opportunity on the Meat and Potatoes podcast. And we look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care.